The red dust of Mars hung in the air like a slow-moving fog. The battlefield was silent except for the soft hum of alien machines. Wrecked human ships lay scattered across the valley. Their metal frames were twisted, their lights dark, their engines dead. The once bright symbol of humanity's courage was now buried under the red sand. Captain Elena Ruiz stood in the middle of that silent graveyard. Her space armor was broken and covered with dust. A deep scratch crossed the left side of her helmet and her breathing was uneven. She had fought for days without rest, moving from one ruined base to another, trying to protect what was left of the human colonies. Before her stood General Cathor, leader of the Varkan Empire, tall, armored in silver plates that glowed with strange blue energy. His long claws reflected the Martian sunlight, and his eyes, cold and sharp, studied her like she was a strange creature rather than an enemy. Behind Cathor stood his massive army, thousands of Varkan soldiers lined up in perfect rows, their rifles glowing faintly with plasma light. Their banners fluttered, showing the silver crest of their empire. The sound of alien engines hummed in the distance, and the ground shook under the weight of their war machines. Cathor's deep voice echoed through the dusty air. "You cannot win without weapons, human," he said slowly. "Your armies have fallen. Your ships burn in orbit. Your people hide beneath the ground. You stand here alone with nothing." His words carried no hate, only certainty. He spoke like someone explaining a simple truth. The Varkan had never lost a war in hundreds of years. They believed in logic, numbers, and technology. In their view, war was a game of mathematics. Whoever had more power always won. Elena looked up at him, her eyes calm but filled with something Cathor could not understand. Behind her cracked helmet visor, her lips curved slightly, not into a smile but into quiet defiance. She didn't speak for a long moment. The Martian wind blew between them, carrying red dust that danced like fire in the sunlight. Then slowly she raised her fists. The movement was small, almost gentle, but it silenced the valley. The alien army stopped murmuring. Even Cathor tilted his head slightly, confused. She had no gun. No sword, no shield. Only her fists. Cathor's eyes narrowed. "You mock me?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but there was a sharp edge in it. Elena shook her head. "No," she said simply. "I'm just not done fighting." Her voice was tired but steady. She didn't shout. She didn't try to sound brave. She spoke like someone who had already accepted death, yet refused to surrender before it came. Cathor let out a low sound, something between a sigh and a growl. "You humans," he said, "always pretending courage is power. Your world is gone. Your machines are broken. What can you do with those small hands?" Elena didn't answer. She took a single step forward. A few hours earlier, before this silent face-off, she had been inside the broken human base, watching her soldiers fall one by one. The communication system was gone. The last transmission from Earth was only static. She knew they were alone. The last human unit on Mars. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Darius, had begged her to retreat. "Captain," he said through a cracked visor, "we can't win this. We have to fall back to the tunnels." Elena looked at the radar, hundreds of enemy signals moving closer. "If we fall back, they'll reach the civilians before we do," she said. Her voice was low but firm. "You go. I'll stay here." Darius stared at her. "That's suicide." "Maybe," she said. "But if someone doesn't slow them down, it's not just me who dies. It'll be all of us." He opened his mouth to argue, but one look at her eyes stopped him. They were tired but steady. The eyes of someone who had already made peace with her decision. He nodded slowly, his throat tight. "For Earth," he said. "For humanity," she replied. He left with the survivors, disappearing into the tunnels beneath the base. Elena stayed behind, standing on the surface as the alien forces descended from the sky like falling stars. Now, hours later, she stood before their leader himself. Cathor's army waited for his command. Some of them laughed, the strange metallic sound echoing through their helmets. They could not understand this human woman who still stood after everything was lost. "You think courage is a weapon?" Cathor said. "It is not. It is a weakness that blinds you. You could have lived if you had surrendered. But now you will fall alone." Elena took another step forward. "Maybe," she said softly, "but I'd rather fall standing than live on my knees." Her words carried across the plain, light and soft. but they struck deeper than any bullet. Even some of the Varkan soldiers fell silent, unsure why the small human voice made their hearts feel heavy. Cathor's gaze hardened. He raised his sword, a blade of blue light that hummed with power. "Then die with your pride, human." But Elena did not move back. She looked around the battlefield, at the wrecked ships, at the dust-covered flags, at the burnt ground. She thought of her family back on Earth, of her team hiding underground, of every human who had refused to give up even when the stars themselves turned against them. Her body was shaking, but not from fear. From memory. She remembered her father teaching her to box in their small backyard when she was a child. He used to say, "When life hits you, hit back. Don't stop. Don't run." She smiled faintly under her helmet. "Guess I never learned how to stop, Dad," she whispered. Cathor noticed her lips moving. "Are you praying?" he asked mockingly. "No," she said. "Just remembering." Then she moved. The first punch hit nothing but air. Cathor dodged easily. He was faster, stronger, built for combat. His claws swung toward her, slicing through the air and caught her shoulder armor. The impact threw her back several steps. Her body screamed in pain, but she steadied herself and came forward again. Cathor watched her with curiosity now. She should have stayed down. Her human body couldn't handle much more, but she was back on her feet, her fists up again. Her punches were weak compared to his strength, but there was something strange about them. Every strike carried emotion. Memory, pain, hope. Her movements were wild but alive. She fought not with skill but with heart. Cathor blocked her again, then kicked her backward. She fell hard, rolling on the red sand. Her breathing was heavy, her vision blurry. The aliens laughed again. To them it was already over, but Elena pushed herself up. Her hands trembled, but she raised them again. She spat blood inside her helmet and smiled. "Still here," she muttered. Cathor stared at her, silent for a long time. Then he lowered his weapon slightly. "Why do you continue?" "There is no victory here." Elena looked at him, her chest rising and falling with every breath. "Because victory isn't always about winning," she said. "Sometimes it's about showing you can't break us." Those words reached even the back rows of the alien army. A ripple of silence moved through them. The sound of the wind filled the space between them again. Cathor didn't understand this kind of strength. He was made for war, trained to follow orders, raised to believe that emotion was weakness. But now, standing before this small human who refused to surrender, he felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. He stepped closer. "You fight alone," he said. "You cannot save your people." Elena met his gaze. "Maybe not," she said. "But I can remind them that we're still human." The fight slowed. The moment stretched long and quiet. The red sun began to set behind the mountains, turning the battlefield into a sea of shadows. The sky glowed orange, and for a second it looked like Earth's evening, the same color her father used to love. Cathor lowered his sword completely. He didn't fear her anymore, but he didn't mock her either. "You are strange," he said finally. "I have faced 1,000 enemies. None have fought like you." Elena smiled faintly. "That's because we don't fight for empire," she said. "We fight for home." He looked at her silently. Then he gave a slow nod, a rare gesture of respect among his kind. "Perhaps there is more to you humans than I believed." Elena didn't answer. Her energy was almost gone. She fell to one knee, her vision dimming. But before darkness took her, she saw something she had never expected. Cathor turned to his soldiers and lowered his hand, signaling them to stop. No one moved. The war paused. And in that strange, quiet moment on Mars, surrounded by the ruins of 1,000 battles, a single unarmed human reminded an entire alien army what courage really looked like. The red sun of Mars rose slowly over the battlefield. The air was cold, the dust quiet, and the smell of burnt metal still hung around. The great alien army of the Varkan stood in silence. Their weapons glowed faintly in the morning light, but no one fired. They waited for their general's command. Captain Elena Ruiz was still standing, though her legs trembled. Her helmet was cracked, her armor half destroyed, and her fists were covered in blood and dust. She had been fighting for hours, maybe days. She couldn't tell anymore. Time had lost its meaning. All she knew was that she was still alive, and as long as she was breathing, she would not kneel. General Cathor looked at her with something close to disbelief. He had fought many enemies, strong ones, brave ones, even desperate ones, but never like her. She was not fighting for victory. She was fighting for something deeper. Cathor turned slightly to his soldiers and raised his clawed hand. "Stand down," he ordered. His voice was heavy, echoing through their ranks. "She is no ordinary creature." The alien army froze. The order confused them. Some exchanged looks through their visors. A few lowered their rifles, but most stood waiting, unsure what their general intended. Cathor walked closer to Elena. His armor made a soft sound with every step. When he stopped just a few feet away, he spoke in a quiet tone that only she could hear. "You fought alone, human," he said. "You fought with nothing, and yet I cannot deny your strength. Tell me, what gives you this power when your body is so weak?" Elena took a deep breath. Her voice came out low and tired. "You wouldn't understand," she said. "You were made for war. We were made for life. But we learned to fight because we had to." Cathor studied her for a long time. His eyes, cold and blue like frozen stars, softened just slightly. "You fight for your kind," he said slowly. "For your people." She nodded. "For my people. For my home. For every person who still believes we can rise again." He looked up at the red sky, as if trying to see through it. "On my world," he said, "we stopped believing long ago. We fight because it is all we know." Elena lowered her fists. "Maybe that's why you'll never really win," she said. "You don't fight for something. You just fight because you can." For a long time, neither of them spoke. The wind moved softly between them, carrying the sound of distant engines. Then Cathor turned and walked back to his army. His soldiers straightened, expecting an order to fire, but he said nothing. He simply stood there, staring at the broken human woman who refused to fall. One of the alien captains stepped forward. "General," he said, "the human is beaten. Shall we finish it?" Cathor did not answer immediately. Then, with a low growl, he said, "No, not yet." The captain blinked in confusion. "But," Cathor cut him off. "I said not yet." The alien captain stepped back quickly, bowing his head. The rest of the army stayed still, their weapons at rest. Elena's knees gave way and she fell to the ground. The dust rose around her. Every part of her body hurt. Her vision was blurry, and her helmet's oxygen level blinked a red warning light. She knew she couldn't keep standing much longer, but even as she fell, she smiled weakly. Because she realized something. The alien general had hesitated. For the first time in this war, the Varkhan had paused, and that pause meant fear. Not fear of her fists, not fear of her strength, but fear of what she represented. Humanity. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, and the light became harsher. Elena woke up inside a small tent, a human medical shelter hidden in the Martian caves. Her helmet was gone and her wounds were wrapped. A familiar voice spoke softly beside her. "You're awake." She turned her head. It was Lieutenant Darius, his face tired but smiling. "You really did it," he said. "You stopped them." Elena tried to sit up, but pain shot through her shoulder. "How long was I out?" she asked. "Almost a day," Darius said. "We found you after they left. The aliens didn't follow. They just stopped." Elena blinked. "Stopped?" "Yeah," he said, almost laughing in disbelief. "Their ships pulled back, no attack, no chase. It's like they're waiting for something." Elena leaned back, trying to process it. "Maybe their general is thinking," she murmured. "Thinking?" Darius said, raising an eyebrow. "You think he'll just decide to stop fighting because of you?" She gave a tired smile. "I don't know. But maybe I showed him something he didn't expect, and that even when humans lose everything, we don't lose our will." Darius looked at her for a long time. "You're crazy," he said finally, shaking his head. "But maybe that's what makes you human." She laughed weakly. "Maybe." Meanwhile, on the alien command ship floating above Mars, General Cathor stood alone in the viewing chamber. The planet below glowed red and gold under the light of the sun. He watched the place where the human had stood. Her words echoed in his mind again and again. You don't fight for something. You just fight because you can. For the first time in his long life, those words disturbed him. He remembered his own home world, once full of oceans and forests, now covered in metal and ash. His people had destroyed it long ago, building factories and weapons that never stopped. They had told themselves it was the only way to survive, but in truth, they had forgotten how to live. Cathor clenched his clawed hand slowly. The humans. Courage had reminded him of something ancient, something his kind had lost. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Advisor Renvar, a thin alien with bright silver eyes. General, he said, bowing, the fleet awaits your command. Do we continue the cleansing operation? Cathor didn't turn. He kept watching the planet. Tell me, Renvar, he said quietly. Do you believe the humans deserve extinction? The advisor hesitated. They are primitive, General, but clever. Their courage is admirable, even if it is foolish. Cathor nodded slowly. Foolish, he repeated. Yes, and yet that foolishness may be their strength. Renvar frowned. Sir? Cathor turned at last, his eyes shining. Prepare the council. I have a message for the Varkan High Command. We will discuss the human question again. Renvar's eyes widened. But General, the Empire will not approve. The humans have resisted for years. The council demands their surrender or destruction. Cathor's voice grew colder. Then they will hear what I have to say. Back on Mars, Elena was recovering slowly. She could walk again, though every step hurt. The underground tunnels were filled with survivors. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, children. They all looked up when she passed by. She didn't feel like a hero, but to them, she was one. Word of her stand against the alien general had spread through the colonies. They called her the Fist of Mars. One evening, she sat near the small power generator, watching the flickering lights. Darius sat beside her, eating from a metal container. You know, he said with a small smile, they say the aliens are afraid of you now. Elena laughed softly. Afraid? I think they just don't know what to do with someone who doesn't quit. Darius shrugged. Same thing, isn't it? She smiled. But deep inside she felt uneasy. The silence above, the sudden stop in attacks, it didn't feel like peace. It felt like the calm before something bigger. She looked up at the rocky ceiling of the cave, as if she could see the stars through it. They're not done, she said quietly. Cathor isn't finished yet. Far above, Cathor stood in front of the Varkan High Command hologram. A dozen alien leaders appeared in glowing blue light, their faces proud and cold. One of them, an elder named Varun, spoke sharply. General Cathor, we hear reports of delay. The human resistance remains. Why have you not finished them? Cathor's voice was deep but calm. Because there is more to them than we believed. The council murmured. Varun narrowed his eyes. You sound almost impressed. Cathor stepped forward. I am. Their technology is nothing compared to ours, their numbers small. Yet they stand against us still. They fight for home, for family, for hope. That makes them dangerous and worthy of respect. Another leader hissed. Respect? For a dying race? Cathor's voice grew firmer. A race that fights without weapons is not dying. It is evolving. The council fell silent. For the first time in centuries, a Varkan general had questioned the purpose of their endless wars. Down on Mars, Elena couldn't sleep. She sat at the edge of the cave looking at the faint red light that leaked in through a crack above. She thought about everything that had happened. The lost cities, the friends she'd buried, the alien general's strange look before he left. Her mind whispered, why did he stop? She didn't have an answer. But she felt something new, a connection, as if her courage had reached him somehow. And in that quiet moment she made a silent promise. If the aliens ever came again, she would stand once more. Not because she wanted to fight, but because she wanted them to see what it truly meant to be human. That night, as she finally closed her eyes, a small meteor streaked across the Martian sky above the surface, a single flash of light cutting through the darkness. It was the same kind of light that once came from Earth's skies long ago, a reminder that even in the darkest times, something still burns bright. It was not a weapon. It was hope, and for both the humans below and the alien general watching. From above, that light meant the same thing. The war was not over, but maybe, just maybe, something greater was beginning. The underground base was silent except for the low hum of machines. The air was cold, heavy, and full of tension. Days had passed since the aliens had stopped their attacks, but no one felt safe. The humans waited in the tunnels, not knowing if the Varkan would return or if this strange silence was the start of something worse. Captain Elena Ruiz walked slowly through the narrow tunnels. Her armor was repaired as best as possible, though scratches and dents still showed the story of her last battle. Every person she passed looked at her with quiet respect. Some nodded, others whispered, but no one spoke loudly. To them, she was not just a soldier anymore. She was a symbol. Children peeked out from behind their parents as she passed. A little girl handed her a small metal flower made from scrap. "For luck," the child said shyly. Elena smiled and took it gently. "Thank you," she said. "I'll keep it close." She placed the metal flower in the small pouch on her belt. It reminded her of why she was still fighting. Not for revenge, but for the chance to protect the innocent. In the command room, Lieutenant Darius and the engineers worked over flickering screens. The holographic map showed red blips across the Martian surface. Alien ships still orbiting, but not attacking. "They're holding position," one of the engineers said. "It's been 3 days. No movement," Darius frowned. "They're waiting for something." When Elena entered, everyone turned. "Captain," Darius said, standing up. "We were just analyzing their behavior." Elena studied the map. "They're not leaving," she said softly. "They're watching." "Yes," Darius agreed. "But why? If they wanted to finish us, they could have done it already." Elena stayed quiet for a long time, thinking of the alien general's eyes, cold, sharp, but not cruel. There had been something else behind them that day on the battlefield. "Maybe," she said finally, "they're questioning themselves." Darius raised an eyebrow. "Aliens questioning themselves? That would be a first," she smiled faintly. "There's always a first time." Far above Mars, in the giant flagship Tyrion's Edge, General Cathor stood alone in the viewing chamber. Below him, the planet glowed red and gold under the thin sunlight. The silence of space pressed around him. He had watched this world burn, watched humans fight and fall. Yet the image of one woman, standing with raised fists and no weapon, would not leave his mind. He could still hear her voice. "You don't fight for something. You just fight because you can." He closed his eyes. His world, the Varkan home planet, had once been beautiful. Oceans of silver water, mountains that touched the clouds. But long ago, his people had chosen power over peace. They built machines that stripped the world bare. Now it was nothing but metal and ash. Maybe that was why her words hurt so much, because deep inside he knew she was right. A soft beep interrupted his thoughts. His advisor, Renvar, appeared on the hologram. "General," Renvar said carefully, "the High Command is not pleased. They demand an explanation for your delay." Cathor didn't look at him. "Tell them I am studying the enemy." "Studying?" Renvar said, his voice unsure. "You mean the humans?" Cathor nodded. "Yes, their courage does not come from logic or power. It comes from something else. Something we have forgotten." Renvar frowned. "General, courage cannot stop plasma fire." Cathor turned sharply, his blue eyes glowing. "And yet it stopped us." Renvar stepped back, startled. Cathor lowered his voice. "For the first time, we hesitate. That is not weakness, Renvar. That is curiosity. And curiosity may be the start of change. Meanwhile, underground, Elena met with the science division. Dr. Imani, a small woman with kind eyes, stood beside a display showing alien data they had intercepted. "Captain," she said, pointing to the screen, "their ships are not preparing for war. Their energy patterns are different, defensive, not offensive." Elena frowned. "So they're not planning to attack?" Not yet, Dr. Imani said, but something's happening among them. Our scanners picked up strange communication patterns, arguments between their leaders. Elena looked thoughtful. Arguments could mean weakness, or opportunity, Dr. Imani added. Elena nodded. Maybe both. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. The tunnels were quiet and most of the soldiers were resting. She sat near a small heat lamp, staring at her hands, scarred, bruised, still aching. Her fists had become a symbol, but to her they were just hands, tired and human. She flexed them slowly and whispered, "I'm no hero." Darius walked up behind her, carrying 2 cups of recycled water. He handed one to her and sat down. "You don't have to be a hero," he said. "You just have to keep standing." She smiled slightly. "I don't even know if I can do that again." "You already did," he said quietly. "You showed them what we are." Elena stared into the dim light. "And what are we, Darius?" He thought for a moment. "We're the kind of people who don't stop, even when it makes no sense." Elena laughed softly. "That sounds about right." The next day, the silence ended. An explosion shook the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling of the tunnels. The alarm lights flashed red. Soldiers rushed through the halls. "Report," Elena shouted, grabbing her helmet. Darius ran in with panic in his eyes. "A rogue alien unit? They're attacking the North Ridge." Elena's mind raced. "A rogue unit?" "Yes," Darius said. "They're not following Cathor's command. The signal's different. Maybe a splinter group trying to finish us off." Elena slammed her helmet on. "Then we stopped them." Outside, the sky burned again. Alien ships hovered low, firing at the rocky surface. The humans rushed to the defense towers using old plasma cannons and makeshift shields. The explosions lit up the horizon. Elena led her squad to the ridge, the ground shaking under their boots. She saw the alien soldiers advancing, smaller in number than before, but still deadly. Their weapons cut through the air with blue light. She ducked behind a rock as plasma fire hit nearby. Darius fired back with his rifle. "They're everywhere!" he yelled. Elena looked around. Their defenses were weak. They didn't have enough power to hold for long. Then she saw something. One of the alien banners on the attackers' shoulders was different. It wasn't the silver of Cathor's army. It was black. "They're rebels," she said. "They're disobeying orders." Darius fired again. "Orders or not, they're trying to kill us!" Elena clenched her jaw. "Then we give them a reason to stop." Above the planet, Cathor received the report. "A rogue division has launched an unauthorized strike," Renvar said urgently. "They are ignoring your command." Cathor's voice was calm but cold. "Who leads them?" "Commander Vrax," Renvar answered. "He believes you've grown weak. He plans to destroy the humans himself." Cathor's hand tightened around the control panel. "Prepare my ship," he said. "We're going down." Renvar blinked. "Down, sir?" "You mean—" "Yes," Cathor said. "To the surface. This war will end face to face." The battle on the ridge grew worse. Smoke filled the air and the ground cracked from the heat. Elena's team was running out of power cells. She threw down her empty rifle and switched to hand-to-hand combat again, her fists moving with the same fierce rhythm that had once silenced an army. A plasma blast hit nearby, throwing her off balance. She fell, rolled, and rose again. Around her, humans and aliens fought in chaos. Then a shadow fell over the battlefield, a massive ship descending through the dust. Its engines roared, shaking the ground. Both sides paused and looked up. A deep, commanding voice echoed through the air. "Stop!" The alien soldiers froze. Even the humans stopped firing for a moment. The ship's ramp opened and General Cathor stepped out, his silver armor gleaming. "Vrax," he roared, "you defy the Empire's command." From among the black-armored aliens, Commander Vrax appeared. Taller, wilder-looking, his armor marked with scars. "You hesitate, General," Vrax shouted. "You let these creatures live. They are weak. They must be destroyed." Cathor's voice thundered back. "They are not weak. They have shown more strength than we have in 1,000 years, Vrax hissed. "You have forgotten what it means to be Varkan." Cathor drew his plasma blade. "And you have forgotten what it means to have honor." The alien armies watched as the two generals faced each other, one loyal to war, one changed by a human's courage. Vrax attacked first, his blade striking fast. Cathor blocked it easily, their swords clashing with bright blue sparks. Each strike echoed through the valley. The ground shook under their feet. Elena and her soldiers watched from behind the rocks, stunned. He's fighting his own kind, Darius whispered. Elena's heart pounded. No, she said softly. He's fighting for something new. The duel raged. Vrax was fast, but Cathor was stronger. When Vrax swung high, Cathor countered and drove him back. Sparks flew, smoke rose, and with one final blow, Cathor disarmed him. Vrax fell to the ground, his weapon spinning away. Cathor pointed his blade at Vrax's chest. This war is over, he said. Vrax glared up. You'll regret this. Cathor's voice stayed calm. Perhaps, but at least I will remember what peace feels like. He turned and raised his arm. All Varkan units, stand down. The alien soldiers lowered their weapons slowly. The battlefield went quiet. Elena stepped out from behind the rocks, walking carefully through the dust. Her helmet visor reflected the sunlight. Cathor turned to look at her. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she said, You came back. Cathor nodded once. To finish what we started, not with blood, but with understanding. She looked around at the silent soldiers, both human and alien. Then maybe we both win. He gave a small, respectful nod. The war was over, or at least that was what everyone hoped. The red sky of Mars, once filled with fire and falling ships, had grown calm again. The smoke had faded. The silence felt strange to the survivors. For the first time in months, no explosions echoed through the air. But peace was never simple. Captain Elena Ruiz stood on the high ridge where the final battle had taken place. The ground was still blackened from plasma fire. Rust-colored dust covered everything, including the broken weapons that no one wanted to touch anymore. She looked across the horizon and saw the alien ships floating quietly above. They were not enemies now, but they weren't friends either. Her radio crackled. Captain Ruiz, came Lieutenant Darius's voice, and the council is waiting. The meeting with General Cathor starts in 10 minutes. Understood, she replied, turning away from the ridge. I'll be there. She took one last look at the empty battlefield and where thousands had fallen, and whispered, Let's make sure it wasn't for nothing. A new beginning. The underground base had changed. Where there were once weapon racks and defense walls, now there were construction tools and communication panels. Humans and aliens worked side by side, though carefully, as if afraid to move too fast. Every glance was a test. Every word had to be chosen with care. Inside the main hall, a long metal table stood under flickering lights. At one side sat the human leaders, Elena, Darius, and Dr. Imani. On the other side, the Varikan officers, tall and calm, with their blue-gray skin and glowing eyes. At the head of their side sat General Cathor. There was no shouting, no weapons, only quiet tension. Cathor spoke first, his deep voice echoing through the hall. Our fleets have withdrawn from orbit. Only a small unit remains to assist in rebuilding. Darius leaned forward. Assist, you mean? With our systems? Yes, Cathor said. Your oxygen facilities and water purifiers are damaged. We can restore them. Dr. Imani nodded. That could save thousands of lives. But Elena kept watching Cathor carefully. And what do you want in return? Cathor looked directly at her. Nothing. Except a promise. What promise? That your people will not raise weapons against mine again. That we build something new instead of another war. Elena didn't answer immediately. She could feel the eyes of every soldier in the room on her. Trust was not easy. Many of them had lost friends, family, and homes. But she also remembered the day Cathor stopped his army, the moment he fought his own kind to save both sides. She finally said, If peace is what you truly want, then we'll match it. Cathor nodded once. Then let us begin. The first Alliance camp weeks passed. The air grew clearer, and sunlight touched the red hills again. Human engineers and Varikan scientists built a joint base, Camp Horizon, above the old tunnels. The camp was strange but hopeful. Tall alien towers stood beside human tents. Machines hummed in both languages. At first, people stayed in groups, humans with humans, aliens with aliens. But soon curiosity broke the walls. Children approached the Varikan engineers, fascinated by their floating tools. Some of the aliens even started learning simple English words. One little boy handed a Varikan a small metal badge with the Earth flag. Friend, the boy said shyly. The alien tilted his head, then smiled in his own way. Friend, he repeated slowly, his voice deep and kind. It was a small thing, but it spread through the camp like light. A hidden shadow, but not everyone accepted peace. Far away in the Martian canyons, a small human group called the Red Dawn gathered secretly. Their leader, Commander Holt, had been a soldier during the war, fierce, proud, and unable to forgive. They killed our people, Holt growled, slamming his fist on a rock table. Now they walk beside us like allies? No, we will never forget. A young man in the group hesitated, but Captain Ruiz said. Holt interrupted sharply. Ruiz is blind. The aliens will turn on us again. We strike before they do. He looked at a small device glowing red in his hand, a stolen alien power core. They gave us peace, he said darkly. We'll give them a reminder. The unlikely friendship back in Camp Horizon, Elena walked beside Cathor through the new garden domes. Plants from Earth grew in the red soil, green leaves glowing softly under artificial lights. The air smelled fresh for the first time in months. Cathor studied the plants curiously. Your world, he said, creates life even in a place of death. It is admirable, Elena smiled faintly. It's stubborn. Like us. Cathor's gaze turned serious. Your people still do not trust mine. They're afraid, she admitted. Fear doesn't disappear overnight. Cathor nodded slowly. Nor should it. Trust must be earned. They stopped near the edge of the dome, looking out at the desert beyond. Do you ever miss your home? She asked softly. Cathor's expression grew distant. Every day. But I fear there is no home left to miss. Our world is dying. Elena turned toward him. Then maybe this can be a new one. Cathor looked at her for a long moment. Perhaps. The attack that night, the peace shattered. A sudden explosion lit up the sky, a ball of blue fire rising from the north side of the camp. The ground shook, alarms blared, and chaos spread. Soldiers ran through the corridors shouting orders. Elena grabbed her communicator. Report, what happened? Power core explosion, someone shouted. Section 4 is burning. She raced through the smoke-filled hallways, coughing as she reached the damaged area. Debris covered the floor. She saw Vark and engineers helping human medics pull people from the rubble. Who did this? Darius shouted, running up beside her. Before she could answer, Cathor appeared through the smoke, his armor scorched but intact. It was not us, he said firmly. Our cores are secured. Someone used stolen tech. Elena's mind went cold. Then it was humans. Cathor met her eyes. Your own people attack your peace. Elena clenched her fists. Not my people, rebels. The search for 2 days they searched. Drones scanned the canyons and patrols spread across the region. Finally, a trail of heat signatures led them to an old mining facility, abandoned since before the war. Elena and Cathor went together, leading a small team. The entrance was half buried under red dust. Inside, the air smelled of rust and burned oil. They found Holt's group working on another explosive device. Stop right there, Elena shouted, raising her hand. The rebels froze. Holt turned slowly, eyes burning with anger. So you came, Captain? With your alien friend. Cathor stepped forward. Your war is over. Do not make it start again. Holt laughed bitterly. You think peace is real? Look at them. They destroyed cities, killed millions, and you stand beside them? Elena kept her voice calm. I saw what they can be now. You can't fix pain with more pain. Holt's hand tightened around the detonator. Maybe you've forgotten who you are, Ruiz, but I haven't. Cathor moved slightly, sensing danger. He will not listen. Elena took a slow step forward. Holt, please. If you do this, everyone dies, humans and aliens. All for what, revenge? That won't bring anyone back. Holt's eyes trembled for a moment and then hardened again. At least they'll remember us. He pressed the button. The choice. The floor shook violently as the explosives began to hum. Red light flashed on the walls and the power cores charging. Cathor shouted, It's unstable. We must evacuate. But Elena ran forward, trying to reach the device. There's still time. Cathor grabbed her arm. You will die. She looked up at him, eyes fierce. Then I'll die saving them. Cathor stared for a heartbeat, then nodded. Together, they rushed to the control panel. Sparks flew, smoke filled the room, and the power cores glowed brighter. Darius's voice shouted through the radio. Captain, get out of there! Elena didn't answer. Her fingers moved quickly across the panel, trying to override the countdown. The numbers flashed faster, in 20 seconds, 15:10. Cathor slammed his hand into the power conduit, his armor absorbing the charge. The energy burned through him, but he didn't stop. Hurry! He growled. Elena hit the final switch. The lights flickered, and the countdown froze at 3. The power drained, leaving only silence. Cathor collapsed to one knee, smoke rising from his armor. Elena caught his arm and shouted, "Stay with me!" He looked up at her, eyes dimming but steady. "Peace, it must live." "It will," she said firmly. "You're not done yet." The aftermath hours later, the rebels were captured and the explosives safely removed. Holt sat silently in chains, his eyes full of regret. "I thought I was saving us," he muttered. Elena looked at him sadly. "You almost destroyed the only hope we had." Outside the facility, Cathor was being treated by both human and alien medics. His wounds were deep, but he would survive. When he opened his eyes, Elena was there. "You should rest," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "And let you handle peace alone?" "Never," she laughed quietly. "You're impossible." "So are you," he replied. A new dawn weeks passed again and Camp Horizon grew stronger. The attack had shaken both sides, but it also united them. The humans saw that Cathor had risked his life for them. The Varkan saw that Elena had risked hers for him. Trust, fragile as glass, began to harden into something real. One morning, Elena walked through the camp as the first sunlight spread across the red desert. Workers were laughing. Children played near the gardens. Above them, the Varkan ships hovered peacefully, reflecting gold light like stars. Cathor approached, his arm still wrapped in healing metal. "You see," he said, "life returns." Elena looked at the rising sun. "Maybe peace isn't something we make," she said. "Maybe it's something we protect on us every single day." The days on Mars had grown brighter. The sky was still red, but the dust storms had become softer and sunlight now reached the surface more often. Camp Horizon, once a place of tension, now pulsed with quiet life. Humans and Varkan walked side by side. The sound of construction replaced the noise of war. Children's laughter echoed through the metal corridors. For the first time in generations, Mars felt alive. But peace, as always, was fragile. Captain Elena Ruiz stood on the command deck, staring at a distant glimmer in the sky, a fleet of unknown ships moving toward the planet. Her heart grew heavy. Lieutenant Darius rushed in, holding a data tablet. "They're not Varkan," he said quickly. "Different design. Energy signatures are strange," Elena frowned. "How many?" "About 30 ships," Darius said. "And they're coming fast." The air in the room seemed to tighten. Elena looked out the window again. "Tell Cathor. We need to speak with him, now." A new threat in the center of Camp Horizon, the main hall buzzed with activity. Human officers and alien commanders filled the room, all watching a large hologram of the incoming fleet. General Cathor stood beside Elena. His face was grim, his deep eyes reflecting the moving lights. "This fleet," Cathor said quietly, "is not from my command. They bear the mark of the Varkan Dominion Council." Elena turned to him. "Your own government?" He nodded slowly. "They have decided to end my rebellion, and your planet." The room fell silent. Cathor's voice grew colder. "To them I am a traitor, and humans are a threat that should never have survived." Darius slammed his hand on the table. "Then we fight!" Elena shook her head. "No, not yet. We can't win another war. Not like this," Cathor looked at her. "You once said you would stand without weapons. Will you still stand now?" Elena met his gaze. "Yes, but this time we'll stand together." Preparing for the storm, the people of Camp Horizon moved quickly. Engineers powered the old shields. Scientists reactivated the signal towers. Children and civilians were sent deep underground, while soldiers, both human and Varkan, prepared side by side. In the command tent, Elena and Cathor studied the maps. "If we attack," Darius said, "they'll destroy us before we get close." Cathor's hand tightened into a fist. "If we hide, they will still burn the planet." Elena looked at both of them. "Then we find another way. We show them what peace looks like, even in the face of destruction." Darius frowned. "You can't reason with a fleet." "Maybe not," she said softly. "But maybe they'll listen to one of their own." She turned to Cathor. "Can you talk to them?" Cathor's expression was unreadable. "They will not listen to me. To them I am already dead." Elena stepped closer. "Then let them see you alive, standing beside the humans you were told to destroy. If they see that, maybe they'll question everything." Cathor looked at her for a long time. Then slowly he nodded. "You asked for the impossible, Captain. But that is what makes you human." The sky burns again. 2 days later, the Dominion fleet entered Mars's orbit. The sky turned dark as their massive ships blocked the sun. Blue light rippled across the atmosphere, the sign of their energy weapons charging. Every soldier on the ground froze, staring up in fear. The calm they had built began to shake. Then a massive voice came through the comm systems, broadcast in both human and Varkan languages. "This is Admiral Varun of the Varkan Dominion. All resistance will end now. Surrender the traitor Cathor or the planet will be cleansed." The message ended with silence. Elena looked at Cathor. "It's your choice now." Cathor's jaw tightened. "If I surrender, they will destroy you anyway." "Then what do we do?" Darius asked. Elena looked up at the red sky. "We show them who we are." The broadcast, with the help of both human and alien engineers, Elena and Cathor activated the old Martian relay system, a massive antenna that could send a message across the entire fleet. Cathor stood before the camera, his tall figure glowing in the flickering light. Elena stood beside him, silent but steady. When the signal went live, Cathor began to speak. "This is General Cathor of the Varkan Empire. I speak to my people, to those who still believe strength is found only in war. You are wrong." He paused, his voice deep and powerful. "I came to this world to destroy it. But here I found something greater than power. I found beings who fight not for conquest, but for life. They are fragile, yet they rise again and again. Their courage is not born from weapons. It is born from love, from hope, from the will to protect one another. That is true strength." He turned slightly toward Elena. "The humans have taught me what it means to fight for something, not against everything." Elena took a step forward. Her voice was calm but filled with emotion. "To the Varkan soldiers who can hear me, we don't want to be your enemies. We've seen enough death. If you destroy us now, you will only prove that life means nothing. But if you choose peace, you'll prove that even the strongest can change." The transmission reached every ship in orbit. For a moment, no one spoke. Then several lights flickered on the radar, signs of hesitation. Some ships stopped moving. But the largest one, the flagship of Admiral Varun, began charging its weapons again. The Admiral's choice on, the Dominion flagship. Admiral Varun stood tall in his command chamber, his sharp eyes fixed on the screen showing Cathor's face. His officers waited for his order. One of them whispered, "Sir, should we proceed?" Varun's voice was hard. "Cathor has betrayed us. Fire when ready." But another officer, younger, stepped forward carefully. "Sir, what if he's right?" Varun turned sharply. "What did you say?" "He speaks of peace," the officer said quietly. "Of purpose. We have fought for centuries, but for what? Our home is gone. Perhaps he found something we lost." Varun's eyes narrowed. "You question the Dominion?" The young officer swallowed hard but did not step back. "I question endless war, sir." For a long moment, the Admiral said nothing. His claws tapped the console slowly. The memory of his own burned planet flashed in his mind. Then he gave a quiet order. "Hold the fire." The stand on Mars and the surface, Elena and Cathor stood watching the sky. Dozens of lights shimmered above, and the fleet waiting in silence. Darius ran up to them. They stopped firing. Elena let out a shaky breath. Maybe it worked. Cathor looked at her. Or maybe they are deciding. The radio crackled. A voice came through, strong but no longer filled with anger. "This is Admiral Varun. General Cathor, your words have reached us. The Dominion will withdraw. But know this, peace is fragile. Protect it well." Then, one by one, the alien ships turned away, their engines glowing as they left Mars's orbit. The people of Camp Horizon stared in disbelief. Then cheers erupted through the base. Laughter, tears, and shouts of victory. Cathor exhaled slowly, the tension finally breaking from his shoulders. "It is over." Elena smiled faintly. "No, it's beginning." The rebirth months passed. Mars became a new world. Human and Varkan communities grew side by side. Fields of green stretched under transparent domes. New schools were built where both species learned together. The sky, though still red, seemed brighter now, as if the planet itself was healing. Elena walked through the garden dome, watching children play. Some had human faces, some alien, and some were simply running together without seeing a difference. Cathor joined her, carrying a small crystal device, a symbol of unity between their worlds. "The Council has accepted our alliance," he said. "The war fleets are gone. Elena smiled. Then it's real. We did it, Cathor looked at her. You did it. You fought with your heart when all weapons had failed. She laughed softly. I just raised my fists, he nodded. And that was enough. The farewell years later, the sky over Mars shimmered with silver ships once more. But this time they brought trade, not war. The alliance of two worlds had begun. Elena, now older, stood once more at the ridge where she had fought her first battle. The wind was gentle. The dust carried no fear anymore. Cathor stood beside her, his armor faded but his eyes bright. You still come here often, he said. She smiled. It reminds me of who we were and what we almost lost. He looked at the horizon. You showed me something I thought was impossible, and mercy stronger than fire. She turned to him. And you showed me something I didn't expect, that even an enemy can become a friend. They stood in silence, watching the twin moons rise above the desert. Finally, Elena whispered, You know, when you told me I couldn't win without weapons, I believed you, Cathor smiled faintly. And yet you proved me wrong, she laughed softly. No, we proved them wrong. Epilogue, the light beyond years later. Long after both Elena and Cathor were gone, their story became legend. Children learned about the human who raised her fists against an army and the alien general who chose peace instead of power. Statues of them stood side by side at the entrance of the great city called Unity, built where Camp Horizon once stood. Every year when the red sun rose over Mars, people of both species gathered there to celebrate the day of first peace, and high above, in the silence of the stars, a small beacon still sent out a repeating message, the same one Cathor and Elena had once broadcast together. Strength is not in the weapon, strength is in the heart. And so the light of that message traveled across galaxies, a promise, a reminder, and a hope that even the darkest battles could lead to something beautiful.